Okay, so once again, good afternoon, everyone. So our topic for today is about, of course, the continuations of what we discussed earlier, no? So this time we focus on, I think, rationale and techniques in sampling, right? So again, many professions like business, government, engineering, science, social research, and agriculture and other seek the broadest possible factual basis for decision making. So in the absence of data on the subject, a decision taking is just like leaping into the dark. No? Sampling is a procedure wherein a fraction of the data is taken from a large set of data, and the inference drawn from the sample is extended to whole group. No? So now, some group or researchers' initial task is to formulate a rational justification for the use of sampling in the research. So if sampling is found appropriate for a research, the research then identifies the target populations as precisely as possible and in a way that makes sense in terms of the purpose of the study. It puts together a list of the target populations from which the sample will be selected, select the sample, make an inference about the population. And all those steps, no, are interwoven and cannot be considered isolated from one another. So simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling fall into the category of simple sampling techniques. Now, the complex sampling techniques are used only in the presence of large experimental data sets. So when efficiency is required, and while making precise estimate about relatively small groups within the large population. So to give us more insights, no, or discussions about the topic, let us all welcome our presenter. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, sir. Thank you for introducing me, and good afternoon, everyone. So, like what we have mentioned, we will be the one that's going to tackle or talk to you about the introduction of statistics. And as it was mentioned earlier, introduction to statistics will be giving us an insight on what we have had and what we are expected to have in the next succeeding reports. Like what we have earlier, we do have the historical perspective in which we understand that statistics has been working hand in hand since the ancient time, since our very beginning, and since from the very first civilization. Likewise, practical use, it was reported by Miss Jeneline Nizon. Likewise, the practical usage of statistics in which reported by Miss Jennifer Angeles that we understand and we were able to know that unconsciously unconsciously we are using statistics. However, it might not be as rigorous, and it might not be as complex as what we are doing in a formal statistics. Like what I've mentioned, unconsciously we are using statistics in our daily lives. Now, for today, I'll be discussing to you the beginning or the rationale of our class, which is statistics. So, like it was mentioned earlier, statistics is a science. So, meaning to say, like we have known, this is when we say science, it is a process, right? So science which enable us to draw conclusion about the various phenomena. So meaning to say we have a lot of phenomena, so that's phenomena on the basis of real data collected on sample basis. A tool for database research, also known as quantitative analysis. So when we say quantitative, we are quantifying something, therefore we are giving numerical value. Any scientific inquiry in which you would like to base your conclusion and decision on real life data, you need to employ statistical techniques. Nowadays, in the developed countries of the world, there is an active movement for of statistical literacy. That is how important statistics when it comes to business, economics, education, health sciences, agriculture, and many more. So application areas, a lot of application in a wide variety of disciplines, such as like what I mentioned, agriculture, like the numbers of your grains or your products being produced, anthropology, in which the time that is being calculated, astronomy, the distance of one planet to another planet, the stars, and so on, biology, in which the like for example in medicine, for example, we're going to have the pressure, our blood chemistry, and so on. No, economics, the growth of a country from a certain period of time. Engineering, of course, environment, geology, genetics, medicine, and so on and so forth. So, meaning to say, from A to Z of various disciplines, the application of statistics cannot be denied. The nature of discipline. So statistics, we do have two basic two it's like research. Okay, in research we do have quantitative and qualitative. In statistics we do have two branches: descriptive statistics and then inferential statistics. So let's go to data. We're going to talk about more about the descriptive and inferential statistics on the succeeding reports. However, let's talk about data. The word data, if you're talking to English speaker, I mean to American speaker, data, but if you're talking to a British, it's data. Okay, so the word data or data appears in many contexts, and it frequently is used in ordinary conversation. Although the word carries something of an aura of scientific mystique, its meanings is quite simple and mundane. It is a Latin for those that are given. So the very basic idea of data is those that are given. The singular form is datum. Data may therefore be thought of as a result of observation. So what is data again? Basic results of observation. Examples of data. Data are collected in many aspects of everyday life. Statements given to the police officer or physician or psychologist during an interview are data. So as we have discussed earlier in advanced research, right? This one can be qualified as a qualitative data. The correct and incorrect answer given by a student on a final examination. This one is a quantitative data. Almost any athletic event produces data. So that one is another quantitative data. The time required by a runner to complete a marathon. So that one also is as you know, time is number, then therefore it's quantitative data. The number of errors committed by a baseball team in 9 innings of play. So that one is another quantitative data. Like what we have mentioned earlier, unknowingly we are using statistics in a form of data that we are encountering every day, every now and then. Another is, of course, data are obtained in the course of scientific inquiry. The position of artifacts and fossils in the archaeological site, the number of interactions between two members of an animal colony during a period of observation, the spectral composition of light emitted by star. So data or data do have two kinds of it: quantitative, which is numeric; qualitative, which is non-numeric. Example of non-numerical data are height, weight, age, number of movies watched, intelligent quotients, etc. So another example of non-numerical data is representing the colors of flowers in a yard: yellow, blue, white, red, etc. So as you have noticed, all of the numerical data per se has a number value, while the non-numerical data has representation, okay, or has intensified adjectival or adjective definition. Okay, so that's what we have to remember. So what is variable? So variable are a quantity that varies from an individual to individual. So variable, we do have the quantitative and then likewise qualitative. So observations and variables. In statistics, an observation often means any of numerical recording of information, whether it is a physical measurement such as height or weight, a classification such as heads or tails, or any answer to the question such as yes or no. When we talk about variable, variable is a characteristic that varies with an individual or an object. It is called variable. For example, age is a variable as it varies from person to person. A variable can assume a number of values. The given set of all possible values from which the variable takes on a place is called its domain. If for a given problem, the domain of variable contains only one value, then the variable is referred to as a constant. So we're going to talk more about the observations and values, variables on the next succeeding reports. However, it would be very important to have a very quite insight on the variables and observation that can be necessary and will be important and vital for our study. Quantitative and qualitative variables. Variables may be classified into quantitative and qualitative according to the form of characteristics of interest. A variable is called quantitative variable when the characteristics can be expressed numerically, such as age, weight, income, or number of children. So again, numerical value. On the other hand, if the characteristics is non-numerical, such as education, your sex, we can include here the gender, the eye color, quality, intelligence, poverty, satisfaction, etc. The variable is referred to as qualitative variable. A qualitative characteristics is also called an attribute. So let's just remember, in order for us not to be confused, when we say or when we talk about qualitative variable, meaning to say the quality. If it's soft, is it if it's hard, is it colorful, is it pale? Okay, so it doesn't have any numerical value. Instead, it gives us the quality. An individual or an object with such a characteristic can be counted or enumerated after having assigned to one of a several mutually exclusive classes or categories. So when we talk about variable, as you can see, like what I've mentioned earlier, variable can be quantified as or can be separated as quantitative and qualitative. However, in the quantitative part, we do have the continuous and then the discrete. Continuous variable, so like what we see right now, measurements such as height, weight, etc., that is considered as continuous variable. While the discrete variable are counting simply gratia, or for example, number of sisters, gaps or jumps, how many times you have jump in a certain period of time, or the gaps or the differences between the two gaps between the different variables. I mean, between the different respondents in a study. So measurement scales, by measurement, we usually mean the assigning of number to observations or objects and scaling in a process of measuring. The four scales of measurements are briefly mentioned below. Nominal scale, the classification or grouping of the observation into mutually exclusive qualitative categories or classes is said to be constitute a nominal scale, I'm sorry. For example, students are classified as male and female. Number one and two may also be used to identify these two categories. Similarly, rainfall can be classified as heavy, moderate, and light. We may use number one, two, three to denote these classes of rainfall. The numbers, when they are used only to identify the categories of given scale, carry no numerical significance and there is no particular order for the grouping. Another example for nominal scale is uh, the heavy rainfall warning, right, that we have. And another one here in Malabon City, since we all know it's really flooded every time. So we do have here our color uh, description, how high will be the high tide or how low the low tide. So another one is that when we do have our what they call this one, our tools for survey, is that we do have our nominal scales also. So it's really important that we further understand nominal scales on the succeeding reports that we have as well as in our advanced research. So measurement scales, ordinal or ranking scales. So it includes the characteristics of nominal scales and in addition has the property of ordering or ranking of measurements. For example, the performance of students or player in a rated is rated as excellent, good, fair, or poor, etc. Number one, two, three are also used to indicate the ranks. The only relation that holds between any pair of categories is that of greater than or more preferred. So like for example, right now in education, right? DepEd has used now highest honor, I mean with honor, higher honor, and then with highest honor, right? So that is for you to identify their ranks. So interval scale, we have also the measurement scale possessing a constant interval size, but not a true 0 point. It is called, oh, Sylvia. Okay, welcome, Sylvia. It is called an interval scale. Temperature measured on either the Celsius or Fahrenheit scale in an outstanding example of interval scale because the same difference exists between 20 degrees Celsius, which is 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and 30 degrees Celsius. So it cannot be said that temperature of 40 degrees is twice as hot as the temperature of the 20 degrees. It is, or for that is the ratio of 40 over 20. Okay. So speaking of ratio scale is the special kind of interval scales where the scale or the seal of measurement has a true 0 point as its origin. So we know that one, right? So 1:2, 1:2:3, right? So that's how we work on ratio. And its ratio is kind of and sort of easier to understand compared to other forms of mathematical processes. Okay, I lost it. Wala na ako. Okay, for example, chemical and manufacturing plants sometimes discharge toxic waste materials such as DDT. It is actually a form of a chemical that can cause that is poisonous to fishes, no, into nearby rivers and streams. These toxins can be adversely affect the plants and animals inhabiting the river and the river banks. So the study of fish was conducted in the Tennessee River in Alabama and the three tributary creeks, Flint Creek, Limestone Creek, and Spring Creek. A total of 144 fish were captured, and the following variables measured for each one. River Creek, from where the fish was captured, species of fish is Chanel fish, largemouth, and smallmouth, buffalo fish. So we have the length of fish, centimeters, the weight of fish per grams, and the DDT concentration in the bodily system of these fish, parts per million. So basically, in a certain study that was conducted, it is not only about the DDT that is available or that is currently present in the fish, but the number of fish that was caught, where it was came from, the species of the fish itself, the length of the fish, the weight of the fish, everything will be quantified in order for us to give a numerical data for it. Okay, so we're going to talk about more of that one on the succeeding reports to my with my classmates there, right? So parameter and statistics, there you go. So parameter, when we say parameter, it's a number that describes a population characteristic. So an average age of all people in the United States is, that is an example of parameter. So it describes the population characteristics. Okay. While we talk about statistics, a number that describe a sample characteristic. So the average age of the people from a sample of 3 states. So basically, it's not we're talking about a sample of the entire population, and that's what we call the statistic. Well, the parameter, it's about the entire population. No, like what the Philippine Statistics Authority is doing, that is called parameter, because they need to get the number of people for the entire country from Batanes going to the last island, the Turtle Island, no, in Mindanao. Okay, so I do have an example here. For example, decide whether the numerical value describes as population parameter or sample statistic. Number one, a recent survey of a sample of NBAs reported that the average salary for an NBA is more than 82,000 pesos. So solution, sample statistic, an average of 82,000 is based on the subset of population. So meaning to say it's not everyone in the NBA have 82,000 pesos salary. Some, okay, might have lower than that. Some might be higher than that. But most of them will have an 82,000 pesos monthly salary. So we do have here another one. Decide whether it's a numerical value described as population parameter or sample statistic. So the first one is actually a sample statistics because we do not have the entire population for it. Okay. This one, stating salaries for CC 667 ID graduates from Holy Angel University increased 8.5% from the previous year. So this one is a population parameter. Okay, so because we're talking about the entire population of the 667 graduates of Holy Angel universities. Okay, so that is why it is very important that we're going to have Dean, we do have our report po for the ano talaga no for the probability and sample sizes in which as far as I know, alam niyo na po yung report niyo no that we're going to have a sampling technique. That's how we call it, right? So marami yun no, iba't iba, may lottery, we do have the snowball sampling, we do have yung categorization, no? So iba-iba po yung sampling technique. But when we do the sampling technique, basically we do have the sample statistics. But if we're going to talk about, for example, are you going to run your thesis or your study, and you would like to have a survey to the entire employees of your company, no? For example, in my case, both teaching and non-teaching will have or will undergo a survey. So that one is a population parameter. No? And if you're masipag, then you're going to do the entire population for your institution or for your company. So we do have here the exercise. Can someone answer it for me? Okay. I know this one is descriptive and inferential. I was not able to discuss this one, Dean. So anyway, the essay na lang po, no? Kasi it was asked by Dean that in every report we're going to have uh, an exercise. Since we do not have the exercise yet for every specific topics, let's just have a qualitative form of answering our techniques, no, or our sorry, our report. First one, what is the importance of statistics in our life? Number two, how may statistics can help you in for you to finish your degree. So ba yan, mali-mali na. And number three, is there any significant relationship the statistics in the life of the entire population as a whole? So that one is a qualitative data. So these are the references that I have. So most of them are from slideshare.net. And I would like to have the disclaimer that no part of the report is being used for any other purposes aside from academic. The reporter do not claim any parts of the report. The citation and ownership of the report is still due to the rightful owner. Thank you, and that will be my report for today.
Okay, thank you very much for a comprehensive discussions about the topic. So to give you some additional inputs for the discussion, no? So in an experiment using a between subject design, the participants are randomly allocated to different level of independent variable, and if all other variables are controlled by being kept constant or by design of the experiment, when it assumed that any differences in the dependent variable measures are due to the independent variable. No, but in many or even most fields of investigation, it is impossible to carry out a true experiment because it is impossible to control the conditions. No, impossible to allocate participants randomly to conditions, or ethically unacceptable to do so. So one is then forced to consider an alternative type of investigation such as pseudo experiment or a correlational study in which data on independent and dependent variable is collated, no, or collected, and the relationship between them are investigated. Now, experiments typically involves analyzing the data for differences. For example, did group A score differently from group B on the dependent variable? Or correlational studies usually involve analyzing the data for correlations or associations. Or for example, did those who scored highly on a measure X also obtain high score on the measure of Y? So that is another question. So as what our presenter mentioned earlier, no, about the independent and dependent variables, no? Independent variables are those aspects of the respondents or cases which you anticipate will affect the output measure, the dependent variable. So on the other hand, an independent variable is often the grouping, no? Grouping variable which divides people, respondent or cases into separate groups. Okay, it's too easy for us to distinguish. When you say independent variable, most commonly open in grouping, or variable which divide people, respondents on the cases, into separate groups. And this division, no, may be based on experimental conditions, or it may be some characteristic of the participants, such as their age group, sex, or economic status. So when the independent variable involves different participants in each group, it is referred to as the between subjects variable. Alternatively, the independent variable may be a number of experimental conditions where all participants take part in every condition. So if this is the case, the variable is a within subjects factor and a repeated measure design is being used. A mixed design, no, maybe you also encountered the term mixed, no? The mixed design is where there are at least two independent variables. Again, at least two independent variables, and one is between subjects while one is within subjects. Okay, the dependent variable is usually a continuous variable such as a measure of performance on an experimental task or a score in a questionnaire which the researcher proposes is affected by the independent variables. In some types of research, no, the dependent variable is categorical, which means participants are divided into categories such as surviving and not surviving, or relapsing and not relapsing. No? The data is then the frequencies. Now, how many people fall into each category? No? Then the research may be concerned with finding which factors predict category membership, and then logistic regressions may be used to analyze the data. It is important not to confuse variable with their levels. No, it is very important. Because an independent variable is the experimental manipulation or the dimension upon which the participants are categorized. So for example, let's say for example, no, suppose we are testing the ability of boys and girls to do mental arithmetic when they were distracted by background noise, which could be loud, quiet, or not present at all. So we would design the experiment so that our participants carried out a mental arithmetic task with loud noise, with quiet noise, or without noise. There would be two independent variables, right? Because we have participant sex na male and female, and noise condition, loud, quiet, and absent of noise. So the first independent variable, we're talking with the two levels, of course, male and female. And the second independent variable has three levels. So this would be a 2 by 3 or 3 by 2, since it does not matter in which order the numbers here are presented, no? With that experiment. So the expression 2 by 3 contains two digits, no, showing there are two independent variables. The actual digits 2 and 3 indicate that one of the variables has two levels and the other has three levels. Okay? That is the way on how we'll be able to understand the variable and dependent independent variable. When we say that types of data, no, there are essential two types of data, right? The frequency and numerical,
Yeah.
depending the type of measurement scale used. So one type of measurement scale is categorical or nominal, where cases are allocated to categories such as what we have a while ago, male and female, or recovering after 2 months, recovering after 6 months, not recovering. And this yield frequency data, which is obtained if you count the number of cases or people in each category. The other type of measurement scale is quantitative or numerical. Here you are measuring not how many people or cases fall into a particular category, but how much or how well they perform by assigning a numerical value to their performance. For example, by recording the time taken to do a task or a number of questions answered. Diba? For 20 minutes, how many or how you'll be able to answer this, how many questions, no, that your participant could answer within 20 minutes. Oh, now, in a nominal scale, the number is simply functioning as a level in the size of the number does not reflect the magnitude or order of the items. Now, like telephone numbers, no, are an example of nominal scale. Since the size of the number does not reflect anything about the size or order of the people who have those numbers. So, similarly, Similarly, in the sample of performance under condition of background noise described a while ago, you might designate the loud noise condition as condition 1, the quiet noise condition as the condition 2, and the no noise condition as a condition 3. No? And here the numbers are acting just as convenient level of each condition or category, and their size mean nothing. So when you have counted the number of cases in each category, you have frequency data which can be analyzed using procedures such as chi-square, log linear analysis, or logistic regression. Okay. Then when we say numerical data, it can be measured on a ratio, interval, or ordinal scale. So in a ratio scale, there is a true zero, and number which is twice a large of another reflects the fact that the attribute being measured is twice as great. No, the ratio scales are rare in the social sciences unless one is using a measure of some physical features such as height, no, or time. And someone who is 2 meters tall is twice as tall as someone who is 1 meter tall. Someone who took 30 seconds to do a task took twice as long as someone who did it in 15 seconds. No? But on the other hand, no, in an interval scale, the difference between two values at one point on that scale is the same as the difference between two equidistant values at another point on the scale. So the usual example cited in the Fahrenheit scale, where the difference between 15 and 20 degrees is the same as the difference between 5 and 10 degrees. And there are few cases of interval scales in the social science, like Like IQ is not an interval scale because the difference between an IQ of 100 and 105 is not the same as the difference between 70 and 75. Although, many example of being data treated as though it were an interval scale. So in an ordinal or rank naman, scale, the size of the numbers reflects the order of the items as in a race where first came before second and second before third. But this information tells you nothing about the intervals between the scale points. First may have been just in front of second, with third trailing far behind. So in practice, the distinction between ratio and interval scales is widely ignored, but ordinal or ranked data is treated differently by using non-parametric procedures. And I think that's it. So I could share a lot because our presenter could able to deliver his presentation perfectly. No? So once again, thank you for the presenter.